What's up, everyone? It's Rennie from That's Rennie, and today we're going to be talking about the importance of having an emergency fund. All right, so it is day, I don't know, like 100 of being on lockdown due to the COVID-19 virus. I'm not really sure what day it is, I really don't. But before I say anything else, I wanted to say that if you have lost anyone because of the COVID-19 virus, or if you have lost anyone during the lockdown due to the coronavirus, I am so sorry, and you have my deepest condolences. I can't imagine how you're feeling and what you and your family are going through. So my deepest condolences. Now, the reason why I felt that this video was so important was because I feel like the coronavirus is exactly the reason why we should all have an emergency fund. I remember when I first started budgeting, and I told a couple of my friends, like, I'm budgeting and I'm doing all these things, and they all kind of like laughed at me. They were like, oh, you're being so dramatic. And I'm like, no, because things happen and this and that. And now we're here. And I know so many of my friends who are jobless right now. And it sucks. As someone who comes from the restaurant business, I know that when we come back from this, when this lockdown is over, things are not going to be the same. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality. A lot of these small restaurants won't be able to make it out of this. So it sucks. And a lot of people are out of jobs, and a lot of people have filed for unemployment, and some of them have filed like a month ago and still haven't received any funds, yet their rent still has to be paid. They still have to give their family food. They still have to pay their bills. Like, life goes on, right? And that's the biggest reason why it's so important to have an emergency fund. So you're probably asking yourself, like, what exactly is an emergency fund, right? It's very simple. An emergency fund is basically a savings account that you are saving for and putting money to the side for in case of an emergency. It's literally in the name. Now, I feel like a lot of the issues that come with an emergency fund is the fact that a lot of people don't realize what an emergency actually is. This pandemic, what we're going through, the lockdown because of COVID-19, this is an emergency. God forbid, a car accident, that is an emergency. Random home damage, that is an emergency. You seeing one of your favorite shoes go on sale is not an emergency at all. At all. You wanting to take an impromptu trip this weekend? Not an emergency. You have to realize what emergencies actually are. And emergencies are those things that you did not see coming. So it's funny because an emergency fund is you being prepared for things that you cannot be prepared for, but you technically are. Now, I know that doesn't really make much sense, but if you think about it, it does. You are preparing yourself for the things that you cannot prepare for. You can't say like, oh yeah, 2 months from now I'm gonna have a car accident, God forbid, of course. You can't say that, you knew that your ceiling was gonna cave in. Those are things that you do not know, but yet you can be prepared for them if they do, God forbid, happen. That is the point of an emergency fund, to not go and have to empty out your checking account or your other savings account that you were hoping to put a down payment on towards your house, a new house or a car. There's no reason why you should touch those savings accounts. That's why you need an emergency fund. So back here is a couple of points, and you guys will probably be able to, probably not. Oh, right here, boom. This is just feel like as good of a shot as you guys are gonna get. And this is just a couple of questions that I feel like I'm definitely, some points that I'm gonna go over as I talk about an emergency fund. So like I said, that is what an emergency fund is, right? So who needs an emergency fund? You do. I do. My mama need one. Oprah might need one. Everyone, everybody and their mama needs an emergency fund, okay? Every single person in the world needs an emergency fund. Now, why do you need an emergency fund? It's simple. Because life happens. It's just that simple. As long as you are waking up in the morning and going to sleep at night, you need an emergency fund, because no matter how good of a planner you might be, no matter how of a perfectionist you might be, things are going to go wrong. It's unfortunate, but it is life. So just acknowledge those things. You know what I mean? Be mindful of the fact that things can go wrong, and you're going to need to have a plan, right? So I feel like a lot of people ask me all the time, like, well, how can I just start saving? Now, look, I personally have 2 different savings accounts, right? So I have my emergency fund and I have my long-term goals savings account. And technically I have 3 different savings, but that's something I'll talk about in another video. Now, the first step that I took in order to start my emergency fund was create an realistic budget. That is the most important step. Create a realistic budget, a budget that works for you and only you. All right, so the biggest reason why the first step to, starting your emergency fund should be creating a budget is simple, because your finances are not the same as mine, and they're not the same as your mom's, and they're not the same as your best friends, and they're not the same as your old high school teacher. They are just not. Everyone has different expenses. Everyone is just different. So it is important for you to create a budget based on your life and your finances, right? So once you sit down and create this budget, right, you can see how much money you can realistically put towards your emergency fund, right? So that might be $5, or maybe it's 50, or maybe it's 100. That all depends on you and what your finances look like. I feel like a lot of people have a hard time just starting it up, but listen, literally, like, if once you create a budget and you see exactly where you can cut money at, you will see how easy this emergency fund will start up. Okay, now let's see. Boom, boom, boom. So we went over this. Super important question that people ask me all the time. Where should I keep my money for my emergency fund? I feel like I should say this again. It is an emergency fund, right? Emergency fund. So that means you're going to need this money when it's an emergency, right? So that means you should be able to access it quickly. Now, that does not mean that you should keep your emergency fund money in a shoebox in your closet. Please. What are you doing? Absolutely not. It should be in a bank account where you have quick access to it, where either you can walk into the bank, physical bank, and go speak to a teller about withdrawing your money, or you can grab your ATM card and go to an ATM and take money out. Either way, you need to be able to easily access it, but not easy enough where someone can come in and take your money, okay? Another thing, I'm not sure if you guys know, but God forbid if there was a fire or something of the sort, insurance, like home insurance, does not cover any money. The reason why is actually pretty common sense. If you think about it, you can say that you had $15,000 in there when you only had 15. So that is why insurance does not cover it. So I suggest don't you ever have your emergency fund money in your home. Find a bank account and one that works for you. I've seen a lot of people actually keep their emergency fund at a different bank than their regular checkings and other savings account. And I think that's actually really smart. If you feel like you're not disciplined enough, I strongly suggest to try that method. That way it's not as easy for you to constantly transfer money from your emergency fund into your checkings account and so on and so forth. That way it's automatically going into your emergency fund, and that's where it belongs. Now, let's look again. I feel like this lighting is terrible. All right. So we went over who needs one, why do you need one, how can you start one, and where should you keep it. Now, how much should be in my emergency fund? Whoo, child. Millions. Just kidding. Like I mentioned earlier, my money, my finances are completely different than yours, right? So what my emergency fund should look like is not what yours should look like, right? So that's just the reality of it. Now, I know you probably have seen, I'm not sure if you guys are into finances and trying to, the whole financial freedom thing. You guys know Dave Ramsey. He has a bunch of baby steps, and his number one baby step is to get your emergency fund to $1,000. This is the one thing I can agree with. I feel like every other thing, I kind of like, I'll take them and I adjust them to fit my life, right? The $1,000 in your emergency fund is super important because of this. Excuse me, I was talking too much. See, my mom will be telling me to slow down, but just kidding, for real. The reason why $1,000 in your emergency fund is a big step is because of this. $1,000 might not seem like a lot to many, but it might be a lot to others. $1,000 can make a dent in most emergencies, at least a dent. A band-aid to some, but a dent in some. So, for example, let's say you get into a car accident, God forbid, right? And you need a rental. $1,000 might be able to cover that. If you have some sort of car damage or something like that, boom, that might be able to help as well. It's those different things, you know what I mean? So I feel like $1,000 is a good starter point. And plus, I feel like there's this, I don't know, like little win in seeing your account, that emergency fund, see like, wow, it's 4 digits in there, you know what I mean? Like, it's a small victory, and you should definitely celebrate. So I think $1,000 is a great starting point, but that does not mean that that's enough at all. Like, not even a little bit. not even close to how much money should be in your emergency fund. And again, how much you should actually have in there is always going to vary. So if you look here, I have that a single income household should have 6-month fund, while a multiple income household should have a 3-month fund. Now that is what is suggested, and I agree. I think that for a single income household, it should be between 4 to 6 months. And the reason why I believe that is because if you have a single income household, you are basically fighting with time. God forbid you lose your income, now you're left with nothing. It's very different than if you were to have a multiple income household, where if someone loses their job, that other person or the other income is still coming in and you're still generating that other income. So you're kind of okay. You're not as great, but you're okay. Now, if you lose all sources of income, you're in a pretty screwed situation. Now, that might be because you left, you might be sick, you lost your job, whatever the case is. You don't know how long that can last. And it's better to be well prepared than to not be. Like right now, I know a lot of states, some states are opening back up, some other states are still on lockdown, as I feel like they should be, but this is not a video about opinions on how every state should handle that, right? So anyways, moving on. The point is, you never know how long a terrible situation can last. You can be out of a job for maybe 2 days, or you can be out of a job for 3 months. So it's better for you to be well prepared. And obviously, it's like, hey, that's a lot of money. I agree, but it's better to be prepared. And you're not going to come up with this money overnight. Like, you are definitely not going to come up. My emergency fund is still not fully funded. It is not fully funded. Funny story, actually, it's this pandemic has, I feel like, has made my husband and I relook at our finances in a completely different way. And the reason I say that is because before all of this stuff happened, our main concern was paying off debt. And now one of our biggest things is to keep building that emergency fund, because we feel that clearly our emergency fund was not where it needed to be. And that's more important right now. Not saying that we're going to stop putting money towards debt, but it's just saying that right now we feel more secure putting a little more money into that emergency fund, especially in these times of need. You know what I mean? So that's that. Now, how do you kind of calculate, when I say a 3-month fund or a 6-month fund, how do you exactly calculate that? So it's very simple. If you've already created a budget, which you should have if you're even starting, if you have listened this far into this conversation, you should have a budget, period, right? So you're going to look at your budget and you're going to see on average how much money you spend on a month-to-month basis, right? Now, if you haven't created a budget and you're kind of like, okay, trying to get the feel of it, okay, like how much should I be? And you want to know how much money you should have in your emergency fund to then create that budget to then see where you need to be at. That's fine too. I'm going to track. This is what you should do. Go look at your monthly statements and see on average how much money you've been spending a month. You know what I mean? So literally, if you want to do it for a whole year, that's fine. Look at it from January to December, see how much you've been spending and take the average of that. And that's how much money your monthly expenses are, right? So from that point, you want to go ahead and decide how much of an emergency fund you actually need. Do you need a 3-month, or do you need a 6-month, or do you need somewhere in between? From there, you're just going to multiply whatever your monthly expenses is by 3 or by 6 or by 4 or by whatever. Or some people have a 12-year, like it just depends on what you want to do. Again, this pandemic has honestly showed us just how important it is for us to be prepared for the random things that can happen in life. And that is definitely something I've learned, you know what I mean? But I just want to wrap it up. I don't want to sit here and make this video longer than it needs to be, because it can get very boring and very repetitive. Again, I'm going to sit here and take, I feel like this is a great shot right here. Why you need an emergency fund, okay? You need one. Trust me, you do. You need an emergency fund. I need an emergency fund. Your mama needs an emergency fund. You need an emergency fund. I wish I could say it enough, but I can't. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to, you know what, actually, before we finish this video, sorry, see, I always like say I want to finish talking, but then I be like, oh, I remember something else. A couple of things that you can do to try and, like, you know, generate more money and to put towards your emergency fund is sell stuff. Like right now, my husband and I have been like redoing things around the house, but one of the things that we're gonna do, hopefully by the end of this week, because he does go back to work next week, which I'm dreading because now I'm stuck with the kids until September. Holy crap. But just kidding, for real, let me stop. Is we're gonna go through our closets, we're gonna see things that we can get rid of and just get rid of our stuff in our closets. Like, yeah, get rid of stuff in our closets, get rid of stuff in our house in general, and sell them on Poshmark, sell them on Marketplace, on Facebook Marketplace, sell them on eBay, sell. If this pandemic, you know, this lockdown ends soon, I suggest having a garage sale. Sell, put your kids out there, sell them. Not the kids, but the stuff that you no longer need. And yeah. Oh, and another thing, if I know it's easier said than done, but you know, look into maybe getting a part-time job. I know a full-time job is difficult, but a part-time job, maybe doing Uber or Instacart or any of those things. You know what I mean? But yeah, all right. For real, this time I'm really wrapping it up, and yeah. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And until next time.